Hey guys, tonight we're going somewhere warm, and by warm I mean scorchingly hot, dry, and full of bugs that don't respect personal space. That's right, we're taking a gentle stroll along the banks of the Nile River, thousands of years ago, to a time when alarm clocks were just squawking ibises and morning breath was probably countered with warm beer. You're standing in the soft, grainy dust of a village at dawn. The sky hasn't decided whether it's pink or gold yet. The river flows lazily nearby, humming its eternal tune as the first boats of the day bob along, loaded with baskets of grain and bundles of reeds. You stretch, yawn, and feel the weight of the dry air hug your skin like a too-warm blanket. The scent of toasted grain is already in the air, drifting from the communal hearth. You're not dreaming. You're in ancient Egypt, and the breakfast menu is exactly what you weren't expecting. Onions, flatbread, and yes, beer. A very specific kind of beer that's closer to a smoothie, if smoothies were lukewarm, full of floating bread chunks, and slightly fizzy in a way that suggests maybe fermentation, maybe mild food poisoning. But don't worry. Everyone's drinking it. Even the kids. You, my friend, would not survive 5 minutes here without caffeine or a phone. But maybe, just maybe, a lukewarm beer at 6 a.m. could grow on you. Especially when it's been brewed with the care of generations and blessed by the gods. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Leave a comment and let me know where in the world you're listening from and what time it is in your sleepy little corner. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You pick up a clay mug, warm from the sun, and sip. It's tangy, earthy, and oddly satisfying. A little grainy, kind of like drinking porridge through a straw made of reeds, which, incidentally, is exactly what people did. The chunks, totally normal. The carbonation, unintentional but festive. Around you, villagers begin their day. Children chase goats. Women roll dough with expert speed, and an old man mutters something about the Nile being in a mood again. He glances at you and nods, then takes a swig from his own mug with a look of reverent joy. It's not just a drink, it's breakfast, it's medicine, it's celebration, it's religion. Beer here isn't just part of life. It is life. It's safer than the water, easier to store than milk, and more nutritious than most of the things you'd find in your fridge after a long vacation. It's also a currency, an offering, and, on rough days, a way to forget that your boss is making you carve another statue of a falcon for the 3rd time this week. You make your way towards the river, where a small cluster of women are setting up the tools for today's brew. There's a woven mat for threshing, 2 large grindstones, clay vats, and baskets of sprouted barley glistening in the light. A few stray ducks waddle through like they own the place. One of them pecks at your sandal. The brewing process isn't quick. First, they soak the grain until it sprouts, unlocking enzymes, though they don't call them that. Then they bake half the mash into a coarse bread called boozer, leaving it undercooked so it stays soft. The other half? It's boiled into a thick porridge in a clay vat. Together they make a frothy, bubbling mixture that will sit in the sun and ferment into what scholars now politely call nutritional beer, and what your stomach might call an adventure. As the brew simmers, a young girl adds date juice for sweetness. Another tosses in a pinch of herbs, probably for flavor, possibly because a cat sneezed in the mix yesterday. Brewing is an art here, a sacred one. Some even whisper prayers over the pot, hoping to keep away bad spirits, or worse, sour batches. You hear the splash of crocodiles further down the river. No one flinches. You do, but they're locals. Crocodiles mind their business. Mostly, as the air thickens with the smell of baking grain and wet clay. You can't help but notice how central beer is to everything around you. Not just in mugs, but on the walls, etched into tomb paintings, stored in jars marked with sacred seals, even offered in elaborate ceremonies to Osiris and Hathor. There's even a god of brewing, though he's never quite as famous as Ra or Anubis. His job? Keep the fermentation smooth and the hangovers gentle. What's even stranger is this. Some archaeologists believe that ancient Egyptian beer was so integral to life that it might have helped kickstart their entire civilization. Farming, done to grow barley, cities, built around grain storage and distribution. Hieroglyphs, first used to record beer rations, but of course, not everyone agrees. As with many things in history, the truth is cloudy, fizzy, and possibly floating with bits of soggy bread. You sit beside a sleepy goat and sip again. The second mouthful goes down easier. You think you might be getting used to it, or maybe your taste buds are just confused. And as the sun rises over the Nile, painting everything in gold, you realize something quietly magical. You're drinking. The same thing made the same way that laborers, priests and queens once drank every day. And maybe, just maybe, it's not the worst breakfast in the world after all. The brewing ritual doesn't happen in silence. You hear laughter, humming, and the rhythmic scrape of stone on grain as a pair of women grind sprouted barley between two slabs of limestone. The smell is stronger now, like a wet bakery, tucked inside a compost bin, but somehow not unpleasant. It's earthy, real. One of the women waves you over. You kneel beside her, and she hands you a flat stone pestle. The barley is sticky, almost gummy, from its sprouting. You begin to mash slowly, mimicking her motion. It's hypnotic, round, firm, back and forth. Grain dust clings to your hands like sand at the beach that refuses to go away, even days later. Another woman tends to the fire beneath the brewing vat. The clay pot is cracked in places, sealed with resin and bubbling faintly like a slow stew. As you watch, she drops a chunk of the barley loaf into the pot. It dissolves lazily, releasing a cloud of aroma that smells ancient. Like you're inhaling the breath of a civilization. The entire process has a rhythm to it, almost musical. There's no stopwatch, no timer, just instinct, tradition, and a little help from the gods. Brewing beer here is more than domestic work. It's a sacred dance passed down through generations. The heat, the timing, the stir. Each motion feels rehearsed, reverent. Occasionally, someone throws a few drops of beer on the ground. An offering, they tell you, for the goddess Hathor. She watches over joy, music, fertility, and beer, which is quite the portfolio, and if anyone deserves a morning libation, it's her. A girl about 10 years old hums softly while shaping dough into a strange shape you can't quite identify. Part bun, part sculpture, part tribute. She presses her thumb into the top of each loaf before setting them in the sun. You ask what it is. She shrugs. For the spirit in the pot, she says, as if that explains everything. And maybe it does. By now you're soaked in sweat. Even in the shade, the Egyptian sun finds its way into your bones. You take another sip of beer. It's slightly tangier now, as if the morning heat has nudged the fermentation forward. A man enters the scene, tall, draped in linen, wearing a charm shaped like a scarab. He approaches the vat like a priest would. An altar, tilts his head to listen, sniffs the brew, and murmurs something under his breath. You catch the words sobek and no sourness, and he dips a wooden ladle into the pot. He offers you a taste. You hesitate. He raises an eyebrow. You sip. It's weird. Like cereal soup with a mild sparkle. But then again you remember the time you paid $12 for a kombucha that tasted like someone fermented apple juice in a gym sock. So maybe weird is subjective. The man nods and walks off. Just to check in, you guess. Not all priests wear gold and chant. Some wear barley dust and keep a sacred eye on the morning mash. You move to the side and sit on an overturned basket. Nearby, a woman fans the mash with a palm frond, not to cool it, just to keep flies away. This is what counts as hygiene here: prayers, fresh leaves, and an almost supernatural tolerance for dust. One woman turns to you and says something that translates loosely to, "Beer brews like a baby. Touch it too much, it gets fussy." You're not entirely sure that's scientific, but she's the one holding the ladle, so you nod. What you're watching isn't just cooking. It's part of a ritual economy, spiritual and practical at once. Beer is used in religious offerings, sure, but also in funerals, contracts, even marriage. In fact, there's a preserved love poem from this era that says something along the lines of, "My desire for you is like thirst, only beer can satisfy." Which honestly sounds like a dating app bio waiting to happen. As you take in this slow, ancient choreography, someone mentions a legend. That brewing was first taught to humans by the gods themselves. There's a myth about Hathor, enraged and bloodthirsty, sent by Ra to punish humanity. But when she began destroying too much, Ra grew worried. To stop her, they dyed beer red and poured it across the land. She drank, thinking it was blood, got delightfully drunk and forgot all about the murder, and that, they say, is why beer matters. Because it once saved the world from divine wrath by turning rage into a nap. Some scholars still debate this story, whether it's allegory, moral tale, or just a divine excuse to party. No one knows for sure. But here in the village, no one cares. It's a story they live every morning, one pot of grainy happiness at a time. Someone claps twice. The brew is ready to rest. The pot is covered with a woven lid. There's a break in the bustle. People settle under shade, chatter softly, sip from shared mugs. A dog sniffs your sandal and decides you're not edible. You take that as a compliment. You glance back at the pot, still steaming, still alive with bubbles. You've just witnessed a full cycle of tradition: water, grain, fire, hands, breath, time, and beer. Always beer. And the next time someone tells you history is dry, you'll think of this bubbling, barley-scented vat in the desert and smile. The line between a baker and a brewer here is, well, there isn't one. You wander toward a row of stone ovens and see the same women who were tending to the mash, now rolling dough, brushing flour off their hands, and shouting across the courtyard about someone burning yesterday's barley flatbread. Again, in ancient Egypt, these were not two separate jobs. Bread and beer were siblings from the same doughy womb. You watch as a woman grabs a lump of unbaked barley mash, sticky, half-fermented, and tosses it into a wide clay basin. She mixes in water, honey, and a few herbs, hums a tune that sounds suspiciously like a lullaby, then pinches off a chunk for baking, leaving the rest to become something in between. It's messy, gloriously messy. The workspace smells like yeast and heat and flour, and maybe, just maybe, a hint of ambition. Because even though no one's wearing a chef's hat or posing for an Instagram story, there's art in this chaos. One baker, older, slightly hunched, with eyes like river stones, waves you over and hands you what looks like a lumpy biscuit. Start of every brew, she says. You bite. It's sour, chewy. Surprisingly alive. Like it might continue fermenting in your mouth if you don't chew fast enough. This is starter, the heart of the process, a living culture of yeast and bacteria carefully nurtured, like a weird pet no one talks about at dinner. If you treat it right, it treats you right. If you forget it in the sun too long, well, let's just say, the villagers still talk about that one time in year 14 of King Pepe when someone's sourdough exploded. The line between the loaves and the jugs is blurred further when you see that some beer is actually made from bread, literally. Old loaves, crumbled, soaked, stirred into a new batch. Recycling, ancient style. It's all circular and slightly mushy. As you lean against a sun-warmed wall, sipping another round of liquid bread, a boy runs by with a basket of half-baked Bowser under his arm. He almost drops it, catches it, grins, and disappears into a house, shouting, "Hot grain, still squishy?" You chuckle. Even 3,000 years ago, there was always that one kid who ran errands with maximum drama. Inside the oven house, it's sweltering. The clay walls trap the heat like an ancient air fryer with no off button. You wipe sweat from your forehead as you watch women slap flattened dough onto the sides of a domed oven, their motions practiced and fast. The bread puffs, blisters and slides off, ready to be cooled, and either eaten or turned back into beer. A younger woman points to a jar in the corner. Inside is a strange grey mush, part starter, part forgotten science experiment. She stirs. It once a day. She doesn't explain why, you just nod. This isn't science, it's law, passed down through matriarchs who could tell if the dough was ready just by smelling it while half asleep. You think back to your own kitchen, your microwave buttons, your frozen pizza. Somehow, this place feels older, but more alive. Someone jokes that if the starter ever dies, the village will lose its luck. You believe it. The air is thick with the smell of culture, literal and figurative. Then the old woman from earlier plops down beside you, stretching her back with a groan. She squints toward the ovens and mutters something that makes everyone laugh. Even the beer gets tired of our heat. You ask her about the overlap. Why make beer and bread together? Why not separate the rolls? She shrugs and points at the same grain sack. Same barley, same hands, same gods. And there it is, the answer you didn't know you needed. You walk back toward the edge of the courtyard where a few brewers are now scooping thick, porridge-like beer into clay jugs, sealing them with mud and reeds. Each jug gets a mark, either a painted glyph or a pressed seal, so they'll know which batch is which. Some jugs are gifts, some are wages, some are offerings. All are important. In the middle of all this, someone sneezes loudly. A woman yells something about, "Don't curse the yeast," and everyone laughs. Even bacteria, apparently, have boundaries. You settle near the shade again, watching the dust swirl in golden light. A breeze carries the scent of sweet grain and smoke. And as you sip again, something clicks. This isn't just about sustenance, it's about rhythm, repetition. A life made of cycles, grind, bake, brew, ferment, repeat. And the comforting thought that tomorrow morning, when the sun rises once more, you'll do it all again, just like they always have. You're barely done blinking the grain dust out of your eyes when someone thrusts a wooden tray into your hands. On it, 2 onion bulbs, a thick slice of yesterday's barley bread, and a shallow cup of freshly ladled beer, still warm from the brew pot. Welcome to breakfast, ancient Egypt style. You settle onto a low stool next to a boy who's already halfway through his onion, biting into it like it's an apple. He glances at your hesitant expression and grins with all the confidence of someone whose taste buds grew up tough. You take a tentative bite. It's aggressive, sharp, earthy, pungent, the kind of flavor that could wake the dead, or at least startle your dreams out of you. He gestures to your beer. Sip, makes the burn go away. You do, and he's right. The beer is softer today, smoother, slightly fizzy from its long ferment, cloudy like a river on a windy day, and thick enough to chew if you wanted to. It chases the onion's sting from your mouth like a soft hand after a slap. This is the breakfast of workers, of farmers, of people who plan to spend the next 10 hours hauling stones under a sun that treats mercy like a foreign concept. The loaf is dense and chewy, made from emmer wheat and baked in conical molds near the communal fire pit. There's sand in it. You try not to think about it, but your teeth definitely notice. You chew slower, like you're performing dentistry on yourself with ancient bread. Good grit means strong teeth, someone jokes. You're not convinced. As you look around, you realize just how central this humble breakfast is to daily life. Workers, scribes, even priests take their morning rations seriously. Beer and bread. It's the foundation, the great equalizer, and not just for humans. A boy nearby pours a splash of beer into a bowl for a temple cat, who slurps it down and immediately begins grooming himself with such pride, you wonder if he's done this ritual since kittenhood. Probably. What's more, you start hearing fragments of conversation that paint a bigger picture. Beer, apparently, is tied to status, not through its presence, but its type. There's Heket, the light, watery beer you're drinking now, meant for everyday meals. Then there's Zithum, a thicker, darker brew made with more fermentation time, sometimes sweetened with dates or carob. It's richer, stronger, and harder to come by. You ask someone how to tell the difference. An old man leans in, sniffs your mug dramatically and says, "Yours? That's the get-back-to-work kind." He chuckles and taps his forehead. "Zithum? That's for after the taxes are paid." Still, the beer isn't just functional, it's meaningful. One woman tells you that on certain feast days they spike it with honey and dried fig juice, then leave it out under the stars for the goddess Taweret, protector of fertility and childbirth. Another man swears that if you drink a full jug before sunrise, you'll never be bitten by a scorpion that day. You question the science, but he's already halfway through his jug, so maybe it's faith-based. It's not just consumption, it's culture. In fact, you start to notice a pattern. Every bite and sip is accompanied by a tiny ritual, a quick prayer, a flick of the wrist to scatter grains, a shared glance of gratitude. Even among the teasing and spitting of onion skins, there's reverence here. And perhaps most curious of all, there's a legal structure behind this modest meal. You overhear someone talking about rations, how each worker, depending on their role, is entitled to a certain amount of beer per day. Not just as refreshment, but as payment. A currency that's both liquid and, well, liquid. A scribe with ink-stained fingers holds up a wax tablet and shows you a record. One man received 4 jugs for quarry labor, another 3 for hauling papyrus. There's a small note next to one name. 2 jugs docked. Late again. Bureaucracy is eternal. Historians still argue about just how official these beer payments were. Some say they were informal like tips. Others claim they were standardized wages regulated by temple authorities. Still others think it depended on region, era, and whether the overseer was feeling generous that day. But here, on the ground, none of that matters. What matters is that your mug is full Your bread is chewy and sandy, and the sun has not yet climbed high enough to cook the top of your skull. You finish your meal beside the same boy who first offered you the onion tip. He's quiet now, sucking on a piece of bread thoughtfully. "You like it?" he asks, gesturing to your empty cup. You nod. "It grows on you," he shrugs. "Everything does." There's a wisdom in his answer you can't quite name, but it settles into your bones the way warmth does after a long chill. And just like that, the village begins to stir again. People rise from their low stools, brush flour from their skirts, and prepare for the long day ahead. You stand, stretch, and glance at the empty mug in your hand. It's simple, stained, and slightly cracked, but in it was a recipe older than the kings brewed with care, shared with strangers, and somehow still bubbling with life. You're starting to think there are more textures in Egyptian beer than in your entire childhood diet. Today's brew? Chunky, thick enough to bend a spoon, if spoons existed. But hey, no judgment. This mug of bubbly breadwater is as sacred as it is suspicious. You're back near the main brewing hut. A fresh batch has been left to ferment overnight in large, open-mouthed clay jars, capped with palm leaves and surrounded by woven baskets to keep the cats from falling in. Apparently there was an incident once. No one speaks of it, but everyone glances at the ginger tabby like it knows what it did. You watch a woman stir one of the pots. It makes a soft glorp glorp sound that's weirdly satisfying. A few bubbles escape to the surface, popping with a hiss that smells like barley, earth, and something slightly fruity. Date juice, maybe? She lifts a gourd scoop and offers you a taste. You sip and chew. And consider chewing some more. It's fizzy in a way that's not carbonation exactly, but rather the soft, unintentional fizz of live fermentation. The beer fizzes like it wants to be soda, but forgot how. It's warm, gritty, and alive, like a hug from someone covered in flour. And it's delicious in a way that's hard to explain. One man chuckles as he watches you struggle to swallow a mouthful of barley paste with grace. "First time with Zitham, eh?" he says. "It'll talk to your stomach later." You don't ask what that means. You just nod politely and hope for mercy. This isn't just a drink, you realize. It's a sacred elixir. And not metaphorically, literally sacred. Every brewing session begins with a blessing, a tiny ritual, a sprinkle of beer on the earth, an offering to the gods. Hathor, of course, is at the top of the divine drinking list. But beer was offered to many gods, Ra, Osiris, even Bastet. You overhear a priest explaining to a scribe that beer is a bridge between the body and the eternal, which sounds poetic until you realize he's saying it while absolutely sloshed. You walk toward a shrine nearby, small and humble. There's no gold, no incense, just a clay statue of a lion-headed goddess and a tray of offerings, dried figs, flowers, and 3 small cups of beer. A fly circles lazily. A boy waves it away like he's done it 1,000 times. The beer offered here isn't for drinking. It's for presence. The gods don't sip. They absorb. The idea is that the essence of beer carries joy, sustenance, and gratitude, so even when it goes warm and sour, it still serves its purpose, to please. You think of your own rituals. Coffee. In the morning, maybe that fancy tea you splurged on and never drank twice. Here, beer is the ritual, not indulgent, not trendy, just constant. There's even a saying someone tells you, bread for the body, beer for the breath. It means that beer keeps your spirit buoyant, even when life is heavy. Honestly, that might be better than any Instagram affirmation you've ever liked. But the brew isn't always equal. One woman shows you 2 jars side by side, Same ingredients, same steps, different results. One is fizzy and bright, the other is flat and smell wrong. She wrinkles her nose. Bad spirit, she says. You ask if that's superstition. She looks at you like you asked if the sun rises just to be cute. Historians today still debate exactly how the Egyptians controlled their fermentation process. Wild yeast, intentional additives, temperature rituals. Truth is, no one really knows, which only makes the beer taste more magical somehow. The woman adds a sprig of papyrus flower to the flat batch and mutters a blessing. You don't understand the words, but you understand the tone, gentle frustration mixed with faith. As if she's coaxing the spirit back into the pot, you dip your finger into another jar, just a touch. The foam tickles your skin. The sensation is strange but kind, like the brew recognizes you, like it's saying, "Yes, you are part of this now." And just then, someone sings. A low, melodic tune. Others join in softly. It's not a hymn exactly, not a chant. Just a communal sound to fill the air as the beer rests. You sit down, lean your back against a sack of barley, and close your eyes for a moment. You let the song wash over you. The smell of beer and bread and warm earth. The soft fizz from the jars. The breeze carrying whispers from the river. For a minute, the world is nothing but bubbles and barley and the weight of sun on skin. And somewhere in the distance, a baby cries, a goat sneezes, and a pot of sacred foam burps gently. History never felt this alive before, or this fizzy. You wander into the shade of a tall mud brick building with faded blue paint still clinging to the corners. This isn't a temple, or a home, or a bakery. It's something far more nerve-wracking. The tax house. Inside, everything smells like grain, ink, and mild paranoia. Men with shaved heads and ink-stained fingers sit behind reed desks, tapping styluses on clay tablets like they're judging your entire life, which, to be fair, they sort of are. Welcome to the beer tax office, where the only thing stronger than the smell of old Emma wheat is the bureaucracy. A guard gestures for you to step aside as a woman hauls in a cart loaded with clay jugs, each one carefully sealed and marked with a small glyph, her family's brewing symbol. She places them down gently, like they're sleeping babies. A scribe opens each one, sniffs it, swirls it, tastes it with the seriousness of a wine critic at a Michelin restaurant. He mumbles something, nods, and marks her total in a record scroll. 2 jars go behind the tax wall, 3 are pushed back to her. A nod. She's done. You watch in awe as another family unloads even more. Children help, balancing jars on their hips. Each jug is not just a beverage, it's currency. And the tax, always in beer. Yes, that's right. The majestic temples of Karnak and Luxor, the golden tombs of forgotten kings, the crocodile pool at Sobek's shrine, all built in part by a consistent flow of barley suds delivered in dusty clay jugs. It turns out Egypt didn't run on gold, it ran on fermentation. Beer was taxed like grain, labor, and land. In many regions it was the tax, especially for farmers and brewers without coin or goods. You brewed your share, offered it up, and in return, the state, well, it probably taxed you again, but at least your soul was clean. A tax collector approaches, his face equal parts tired and suspicious. He pokes a sealed jug you've been curiously eyeing. Too sweet, he grumbles, probably hiding a weak batch. He scribbles something into his wax tablet and moves on. You ask how much beer the temple takes each month. A scribe raises one eyebrow. Enough to keep the gods from smiting us and the priests from complaining. You both laugh, but you're not sure if he's joking. This whole system is staggeringly efficient. The jugs are categorized: temple rations, worker wages, special ceremonies. Some are marked for festivals, others for maintenance. A priest passes through with a jug labeled in red ochre. Hathor's feast. It's carried like it holds lightning. You follow a delivery boy to the rear of the building where a shaded courtyard is stacked with thousands of beer jars, labeled, counted, rotated. It's like a divine liquor store mixed with an Amazon warehouse. Somewhere between the amphorae, a cat naps under a sign that probably says, "Do not disturb the yeast." And here's the funny part. Some of this beer won't ever be drunk. It's meant for ritual pouring, storage, or trade. Certain temples even resold surplus beer to local markets. Yes, ancient Egypt had state-sponsored beer redistribution. Welcome to Pharaoh's fermentation fund. You're told that every season, tax inspectors visit the villages, sampling beer from each household. Some bring small cups, others bring full flasks, all bring opinions. One man supposedly claimed he could tell a family's honesty just by the tone of their fermentation bubbles. Of course, scholars today still debate just how structured the beer tax really was. Were these official records, local traditions, religious dues, or just the temple flexing its grain-guzzling muscles? The truth probably lies somewhere in the middle, half ritual, half regulation, and all covered in barley dust. Back inside, a young girl waits nervously as her mother argues over a rejected jug. The scribe insists it's understrength. The woman swears the heat just thinned it. A compromise is reached, one jar taxed, one kept. She sighs, bows slightly, and gathers her things. You help her carry a jug back to her donkey cart. She thanks you with a half smile, then mutters something about beer being easier to deal with than scribes. You believe her. The tax office begins to quiet down as the sun climbs higher. Workers roll shutter screens to block the glare. The beer jars are sealed again, the numbers recorded, and the gods, apparently, satisfied for now. As you walk away, you can't help but marvel at the bureaucracy of beer. You always thought taxes were dull, but here, in this dusty, sun-baked courtyard, you've just watched one of the oldest forms of public service in action, powered by yeast, labor, and 1,000 tiny bubbles. And, somewhere in the heart of a temple, a priest is probably sipping one of those taxed jugs, whispering prayers over foam, and thanking the gods that nobody sent in a sour batch this week. You follow the dusty path out of town, past rows of palms and flickering mirages, until you reach a low plateau. And there it is, looming, golden, impossible, not just a pyramid, but a project. The construction site buzzes like a hive, not with machines, of course, but with people, hundreds of them, hauling limestone blocks, dragging ropes, chiseling surfaces, and shouting over one another in a language baked dry by the sun. And behind all of it, fueling it, motivating it, quietly bribing the universe into making this happen, is beer. You duck under a sun-dyed awning and meet a worker with calloused hands and a wild grin. "You here for your ration?" he asks. You shrug. Why not? He hands you a jug, lukewarm, foamy, and probably the most important paycheck in the ancient world. Here, beer is currency. Workers aren't paid in gold, or silver, or even promises. They're paid in litres, 4 to 5 litres per day to be precise. That's the standard ration for a skilled labourer. Some get more, some get less, but nobody works without their brew. You take a sip. It's stronger than the village. Batches, denser, richer. Probably brewed with the full intention of keeping people full, happy, and just tipsy enough to forget they're building a tomb the size of a mountain. A group of men rest nearby, mugs in hand, laughing about how the overseer's robe caught fire last week when he leaned too close to a torch. "Didn't even spill his beer," one cackles. That's a professional. It's hard work and dangerous. You see men with bruised arms, cracked nails, backs that bend from years of lifting. And yet, there's a camaraderie here, a shared understanding that no matter how hard the labor, the beer will be there at dawn, at noon, and at night. Even the lowest-ranking worker gets his share. And it's not just for hydration, though the Nile water isn't exactly sparkling clean. The beer here is nutritional, full of calories, B vitamins, and fermented goodness that probably saved more lives than any scribe ever did. You approach a makeshift bar, a long wooden plank with clay jugs lined up like prizes. Behind it, a woman ladles out portions based on tokens. Each token is carved with a worker's role: bricklayer, porter, rope hauler. The tokens come in different shapes: a triangle for foreman, a circle for stone lifters, a squiggly fish-looking thing for... Well, nobody seems to know, but they all agree the guy who holds it always smells like goats. She squints at your hands, then hands you a cup anyway. You look dusty enough. Historians have long debated how voluntary this labor really was. Some claimed these were free workers, hired and respected. Others argue the system wasn't far from organized servitude. But one thing is clear: the beer was real, and it was central. You sit in the shade of a half-built ramp, sipping slowly. The air is thick with dust and effort. Somewhere nearby, someone sings, a work chant, low and rhythmic. Others join in like gears turning in unison. The sound makes the stone feel lighter, the hours shorter, the sun less cruel. One man beside you leans in. "You want to know how we move the big ones?" he whispers. You nod. He raises his jug. "Beer, that's how." Then he laughs so hard he spills some on his feet. Jokes aside, beer did make this possible, not just physically, but economically. Temples brewed it, farmers traded it, the state taxed it. And here, in this dust-choked amphitheater of labor, it was lifeblood. Even the overseers know this. You spot one now, inspecting the workers' jugs. He doesn't care about the beer's taste, he's counting volume, ensuring everyone's had their fill. Not out of kindness, but because a thirsty crew is a slow crew, and a slow crew delays a pharaoh's eternity. You stand and follow a trail of cart tracks to the storage tent. Inside are rows of sealed amphorae stacked like treasure, each one labeled with its brew date, strength, and intended shift. "Third, Moon Morning Crew," reads one. "Sun-high ration, overseer only," says another. Yes, even the management has their stash. Back outside, you pass a group playing a game, something with sticks and flat stones. The winner gets an extra gulp. The loser has to carry water for the bathhouse. You're invited to join, but politely decline. These guys are serious. You value your spine. The sun creeps higher, and the next shift prepares. More tokens are exchanged, more mugs are filled. And as the chanting starts again, you realize this is more than construction. It's ritual, a temple built from sweat, limestone, and the slow fermentation of barley dreams. And when the final stone is placed, generations from now, people will marvel at the precision, the grandeur, the legacy, but you'll know the truth. It was the beer that built the pyramid. You find yourself back in town just as the sun begins to dip, its golden light bouncing off temple walls and casting everything in the kind of glow that makes you forgive the heat, the sand, and maybe even the guy who accidentally stepped on your foot with his ox cart this morning. The air is shifting now, less work, more revelry. People are relaxing, washing up, gathering around open courtyards. And, no surprise, the beer is flowing again. But this time, it's not payment. It's celebration. You're invited to a courtyard tucked between two date palms where musicians pluck stringed instruments that sound like sleepy harps, and women weave flower garlands with fingers still dusted in flour. Everyone is smiling in that languid, half-dreamy way that only happens when the beer is just right and the day's labor is behind you. A woman hands you a cup. This one darker, richer, with a sweet, sour tang that lingers like a story you're not quite ready to finish. "Sekhmet's favorite," she says, winking. "Be careful, drink too much and you might wake up a lion." You laugh, but then the music shifts, and an old man begins to speak. Not loudly, his voice is more like silk being folded, but everyone leans in. It's story time. And tonight's tale? A drunk goddess and the day humanity was almost erased from the earth. According to the myth, the sun god Ra grew weary of humans disobeying divine order. So he sent Sekhmet, the lion-headed goddess of war, to punish them. And punish she did. With claws. And fire. And a general vibe that screamed, "You messed with the wrong deity." The blood flowed, the people scattered, and the earth itself trembled beneath her wrath. But Ra, seeing the destruction, changed his mind. "Too much," he said, probably over a divine latte. So he had an idea. He ordered vats of beer, dyed red with pomegranate and ochre, poured across the land to mimic the blood she loved so much. Sekhmet, thinking it was a buffet of carnage, drank deeply. And then she got drunk. Delightfully, gloriously, irreversibly drunk. She stumbled, laughed, napped, and woke up with no memory of the whole apocalypse thing. Crisis averted. You glance down at your own cup. "This is that beer?" you whisper. The woman next to you grins. "It's a version. Ours doesn't end civilizations, just hangovers." The story shifts to another character now, pharaohs. Turns out they didn't just sip wine from golden goblets and decree laws while being fanned by palm fronds. Some of them really knew how to party. Ramses III reportedly threw a festival so enormous that his palace ran out of beer, leading to what was possibly the world's first documented brew shortage. Imagine telling that to your local craft brewery. "Sorry, we're out of IPA. Ramses drank it all in 1150 BCE. Even Akhenaten, the heretic king with the weird sun religion, hosted nighttime feasts where beer flowed in rivers. Literally, slaves would pour jugs into small channels that looped around the banquet halls. You'd sit, dip your cup in, and pretend you weren't just drinking your neighbor's backwash. You sip slowly now, letting the flavor settle on your tongue. Somewhere between toasty and tart. A little like banana bread, made by someone who's never actually tasted a banana. The night deepens, torches flicker, the music swells and dips. A woman begins to dance, her arms flowing like the river, her feet gliding over the dusty earth. Children giggle, drunk on stories, not beer, though one attempts to swipe a cup and is promptly caught by a grandmother wielding a sandal with supernatural precision. You look around and realize this isn't just a gathering, it's an echo, a reenactment of rituals and rhythms that go back farther than memory. When the gods walked among mortals. When beer calmed lions and pharaohs danced beneath the stars. Scholars still debate whether these stories were allegory, social commentary, or just really creative ways to explain why you woke up next to a goat. But here, in the flickering half-light, nobody argues. They just sip, laugh, and let the myth sink into their bones. You stretch your legs, the stone beneath you is warm. The air smells like flowers and yeast and the last crackle of fire. Someone hums the melody from earlier. Someone else snores. And someone, probably the guy who spilled beer on your sandals, is already asleep in the corner using a sack of dates as a pillow. And you? You lean back, cup still in hand, heartbeat synced, to the drums, mind drifting, the gods are full, the pharaohs are pleased, and for tonight at least, the beer has done its job. The morning after the festival is quieter than you expect. Not silent, there's always a goat braying somewhere, but the village hums in a slower, dreamier rhythm, the kind of rhythm that says, we all had one too many, but we still have things to do, but not everyone's nursing a clay mug of hangover broth. You hear drums in the distance, laughter, shouting, not angry, shouting, celebratory shouting. Something's happening. You follow the sound across the fields and toward the city of Memphis, where the beer festival is already underway. Yes, you heard right. A full-on, state-approved, wildly chaotic beer festival, like Oktoberfest. But with more sunburn and less lederhosen, you arrive at a field bustling with life. Temporary tents flap in the wind. Vendors sell garlands, roasted duck skewers, and necklaces made from barley straw. And front and center, a giant vat of beer sits bubbling like a cauldron of joy, guarded by two men who look suspiciously tipsy for 9 a.m. Everyone's dressed in festival linens, dyed, perfumed, some even dusted, with ground blue stone for flair. You catch the scent of wild mint, fish on a stick, and something sweet that might be date pudding or spoiled honey. It's hard to tell. The day kicks off with an offering. A priestess of Hathor steps into a cleared circle, raises a jug high, and pours its contents onto the earth. For joy, she says, for the gods, for a really, really good day. The crowd erupts in cheers, and then chaos. There's dancing, of course. Drums, flutes, clapping, shouting. One group spins in a circle so fast you're sure someone's going to trip, but somehow no one does. Kids chase each other with garlands. Men juggle clay mugs. A woman balances 3 jugs on her head while singing a song about barley and betrayal. But the highlight, according to the man next to you with one tooth and too many opinions, is the mud wrestling. Part of the ritual, he insists, sipping from a coconut shell. The muddier, the luckier, Hathor likes it messy. You don't argue. Instead, you follow the trail of footprints toward a sunken pit where several people are already covered in wet, reddish Nile mud, flinging each other into the muck with glee. The referee, a bald man with a stick and zero authority, is mostly ignored. You ask what this has to do with beer. A woman next to you, her face smeared with clay and joy, replies, "Everything. Beer loosens the soul. Mud grounds it." Together? Balance. You scribble that down mentally for your therapist. Not to be outdone, someone rolls in a makeshift chariot, pulled by 2 donkeys and loaded with kegs. They start pouring samples into leaf cups, boasting about their batch being fermented under 3 moons and a lucky cat. People toast, people spill, people cheer. The beer here isn't just food or payment or worship. It's permission. Permission to laugh too loudly, to fall down and stay there for a while, to forget the bricks, the taxes, the sand in your sandals. Nearby, a game begins. Beer balance. Contestants must walk a narrow beam while holding a jug on their head. First to fall gets booed. Last to fall gets a wreath and a second jug. A teenager wins by sheer luck or possibly divine intervention, considering how often he stumbles without ever dropping the jug. As the sun climbs higher, the singing grows bolder, the dancing sloppier. you see two men debating whether the river, God happy, would enjoy a mango. No one knows where they got a mango or why they're asking it that way. And suddenly, without warning, a silence falls. All eyes turn to the festival's centerpiece, the golden keg. It's not real gold, of course. It's just a decorated barrel gilded with leaf and linen, but it holds the blessed beer, a batch brewed under specific prayers, timing, and with barley harvested during the fat moon. A hush descends as the high priest dips a ceremonial ladle, fills a goblet, and drinks. He pauses, smacks his lips, then raises the cup. Hathor is pleased. Cue the mayhem. The keg is opened. Everyone rushes to dip their cups, bowls, fingers, anything that holds liquid. The beer inside is surprisingly smooth, dark, rich, sweet with dates, sharp with citrus peel, and faintly floral, like someone infused a barley smoothie with perfume and ambition. You sip, and sip again, and maybe one more time, just to be polite. This isn't just a drink, it's history. A living recipe, unchanged for centuries, reborn every festival with a little variation, a little luck, and a lot of noise. Modern historians still argue whether these festivals were religious in essence, economic in purpose, or just a good excuse to throw mud at your neighbor. But the villagers here don't argue, they just dance. As dusk falls, you watch people slump into piles of linen and laughter. Someone plays a flute in a minor key. Someone else hums a lullaby about a barley sprout finding its way home. You sit on a mound of hay, belly full, mind foggy, heart soft. And as the stars emerge over Memphis, you realize something lovely. The beer didn't just build Egypt's monuments. It held its people together through joy, through ritual, through good times and mud wrestling. The morning after the festival tastes like warm ashes and regret. You stir awake beneath a drooping fig tree, the scent of yesterday's beer still clinging to your skin like ancient perfume. Your head is fuzzy. Your sandals are missing. Someone's goat is chewing on a garland suspiciously close to your face, but you're not alone. A gentle hand helps you to your feet, belonging to an older woman with a lined face and sharp eyes that suggest she's seen her share of festivals and still judged them all. She hands you a cup of something pale and milky. You sip. It's different. Not fizzy, not chunky, not heavy, just smooth, earthy, almost calming. She nods, satisfied. This, she says, is women's beer. You blink. She gestures for you to follow her down a quiet path, away from the noise and mess, into the inner courtyard of a modest house draped in palm fronds. A circle of women is already at work, stirring pots, pounding barley, laughing in that knowing way women do, when they've been up since dawn and still remember where everyone else put their things. This is a female space, not secretive, just sacred in a quieter way. And the beer here, it's special. You sit and listen as they explain, this brew is for balance. It's lighter in body but denser in meaning. It's made with wheat instead of barley, infused with herbs like fenugreek and hibiscus, brewed under waxing moons, poured only by women, shared only among them, or with those they choose. You sip again. There's a floral sweetness, but also something grounding, like bread that remembers the soil it grew from. A young girl, maybe 12, stands beside a clay jar reading off a chant with careful precision. For strength of the womb, for calming the heat, for welcoming life. She blushes when she notices you watching, then continues with the tiniest smile. This beer isn't just for hydration. It's medicine, ritual, and reassurance in liquid form. One woman, her arms strong from years of stirring, her necklace shaped like a papyrus blossom, tells you this brew is served at births, after miscarriages, during rites of passage, even at funerals for women who died in childbirth. It's part of life's bookends. Joy and sorrow, both held in the same cup. Another woman adds, "When the men build pyramids, we build futures." She laughs, but the truth behind it hangs gently in the air. You notice that each woman's batch tastes slightly different. One is bitter. One is creamy. One has a smoky undertone, like someone whispered secrets into the pot. They brew in small vessels, not the massive vats used by the state or temples. It's intimate, intentional. A pregnant woman enters, carefully lowering herself onto a cushion. She's handed a warm cup, thicker than yours. "Extra fenugreek," someone says. "Helps the milk." She smiles, eyes closed, one hand on her belly, the other cradling the brew like a blessing. And now it strikes you, this isn't beer as the men know it. It's ritual wrapped in warmth. It doesn't shout, it hums, it remembers, it heals. You ask if men ever drink this. One woman raises an eyebrow. "They can," she says, "but they'll never taste it the same." Everyone nods. You nod too, even though you're not quite sure what that means. But it feels right. Scholars today have puzzled over ancient papyri that list ingredients used in these beers. Varieties of wheat, local herbs, even rare flowers. Some thought these were early pharmaceuticals, others dismissed them as home remedies. But they missed the point. This was wisdom. Female wisdom, not written in ink, but in foam and memory and the tilt of a clay jug passed from hand to hand. A child passes by, clinging to her mother's leg. She's given a few drops from a shallow bowl. Not enough to intoxicate, just enough to welcome her into the circle. Her first sip of culture, of continuity. You stay for a while, listening to stories that spiral like smoke, births, weddings. Arguments, reconciliations, always told with laughter, always ending with, "And then we made a new batch." Before you leave, the elder who found you offers one last sip. It's cooler now, almost crisp, like morning. "Take this with you," she says, "and tell your gods it came from us." You bow, not just out of politeness, but out of quiet awe, because now you understand. While men offered beer to gods of war and sun, women brewed for the gods of life itself. And this wheat beer, simple and soft, carried more power than 1,000 golden goblets. By now you've drunk more varieties of ancient Egyptian beer than your 21st century liver is emotionally prepared to process. Fizzy, chunky, medicinal, moon-blessed. You've had it all. But today, things take a turn. You're invited to a garden, not a dusty field or riverside courtyard, but a real garden trimmed with reeds and sycamores, its paths lined with flat stones, and its air perfumed by lotus blooms. A scribe whispers, "This is where the wine people drink." Ah, the wine people. You walk past limestone benches and silk canopies, and you notice the change in tone, less boisterous, more judgy. You sit beside a man with meticulously oiled hair and an accent so clipped you're not sure he's breathing. He's holding a delicate goblet filled with something blood-red. He eyes you. "Beer," he says, wrinkling his nose like you'd just offered him spoiled goat milk. That's for builders. The class divide here isn't drawn by gold or land, it's fermented. Beer is the drink of the worker. Wine? That's for the elite, the priests, the scribes, the people who only lift papyrus and occasionally their own egos. You raise an eyebrow and ask, why? His answer comes with a smirk. Beer is born from bread. Wine is born from sun and fruit and poetry. You resist the urge to remind him that bread also takes poetry, especially when you have to chew it with your jaw like a crocodile. But then again, you taste the wine, it's sweet, cold, clean. No chunks, no fizz, no herbal surprise notes, just clarity. It's easy to see why someone in fine linen would choose this over a barley smoothie. It tastes like luxury and grapes and not having to work today. A woman nearby joins the conversation, her jewelry jingling softly as she gestures with her goblet. We serve wine at the temple feasts, she says, especially during ceremonies for Osiris. You don't honor the god of rebirth with something that smells like swamp cereal. You mentioned that beer was offered to Hathor, Sekhmet, and even Ra. She waves it off. Yes, yes, beer is generous. Wine is divine. You begin to notice how deep this preference runs. Wine was imported from the Levant and Mediterranean. It came in amphorae sealed with wax and marked with royal crests. It was stored in cool cellars and poured by servants who whispered as they moved. Beer? Beer sat in jugs outside, fermenting under the sun, shared by calloused hands and hungry bellies. One was for ceremony, the other for survival. And yet, despite the airs, the poetry, the grape harvests under the stars, you overhear one of the noblemen whisper, I had beer at the festival once. Didn't stop smiling for 3 days. Another leans in. When my brother was ill, it was a barley brew that saved him. Hot, thick, with ginger root. He couldn't stomach wine. The truth seeps through like spilled mash. Wine might rule the palaces, but beer rules the people. Modern historians love this debate. Some argue that wine became the status drink precisely because beer was too common. Others suggest climate played a role. Barley grew easily in Egypt, grapes not so much. Still others say it was all about ritual purity. But here, in this moment, under this sycamore tree, the truth is simpler. A young servant enters, balancing 2 trays, one of wine, one of beer. Guests politely lift their goblets, but one man in silk and gold reaches for the beer. He sips, smiles. Reminds me of home, he says. The group pauses. Then, like a spell broken, a few more hands reach out, quietly, casually. One man says, just to compare. A woman whispers, it's for the story I'm writing. You watch as goblets are swapped for clay mugs, linen sleeves rolled back, sandals kicked off. The tone softens. The laughter deepens. Maybe beer isn't just for builders. Maybe it's for belonging. And maybe, just maybe, you've stumbled into something timeless. The moment when class lines blur, when taste becomes memory, and when an elite scribe admits between sips that barley never really left his heart. You lean back. The garden sways in the breeze. The wine glows in its jars. The beer fizzes gently in its cups, and somewhere, probably, a goat eats a scroll. You weren't planning to visit a doctor today, but here you are, sitting cross-legged in a shadowy room that smells like cumin, sweat, and ancient mystery, while a man in a leopard skin cloak pokes your wrist and hums a tune that sounds suspiciously like a lullaby for overcooked vegetables. He's not just a healer, he's a WNW, a temple-trained physician, and in his apothecary stacked with clay jars, dried herbs, old scrolls, and questionable liquids, the star ingredient isn't scorpion, dust, or crocodile bile. It's beer. You're dry, he tells you, peering into your eyes. Your liver's lonely. You need warmth. Fermentation. Maybe a garlic poultice, but definitely a barley tonic. He pulls down a small jar, sealed with beeswax, labelled with a faded hieratic symbol, and scoops out a chunky, honey-coloured paste. "This one's for digestion," he says, spreading it on flatbread like hummus. Fermented with sweet dates, bitter herbs, and possibly cinnamon. The label smudged. You nibble. It's tart, sweet, and vaguely alarming, but your stomach already feels better, or maybe it's just in shock. Beer here isn't just a beverage, it's medicine, used for coughs, headaches, constipation, labor pains, bad dreams, and, according to the doctor's assistant, romantic disappointment. He shows you a scroll listing remedies. One reads, "For aching teeth, rinse with beer and chew on papyrus ash." Another, "For nightmares, sleep with a jug beside the bed." Not to drink, just for comfort. Like a security blanket that fizzes, and then comes the showstopper. You're led to a small annex chamber, cooler and darker. Inside lies a linen-wrapped figure, a mummy. Not a terrifying movie version, just a noblewoman, long past, her face serene, her resting place adorned with painted jars. And among them, a sealed amphora marked with a curious glyph, the beer symbol. "This," the healer says solemnly, "is mummy beer." You raise an eyebrow. He nods. "We brewed it especially for her journey, with dates, myrrh, and lotus. It's meant to nourish her in the afterlife." He pauses, then adds, I would not recommend drinking it now." You back away slowly. Still, the point stands. Beer isn't just for the living. It accompanies the dead, offered in tombs, painted in funerary art, and sometimes even mentioned in last wills. A sort of divine to-go cup for the next world. The healer shows you an embalming kit, linen strips, natron salts, and beside them a jug of beer-based disinfectant. "We use it to cleanse the body," he explains. "It fights rot and spirits. Both kinds. Scholars today marvel at the antiseptic properties of fermented barley. They've found chemical traces in ancient medical jars that confirm it wasn't just spiritual. It worked. Sort of. One papyrus lists over 700 prescriptions, many of them featuring beer. To be sipped, soaked, smeared, or inhaled. One remedy involves beer boiled with crushed lizard bone. Another prescribes beer soaked into reeds, then woven into a headband to banish sorrow. You assume it worked, or at least distracted the wearer enough to forget what the sorrow was. You ask the healer what his favorite brew is. He grins. For the body, a hot mash with date sap and cloves. For the soul, a cold mug under a fig tree just after sunset. With no one talking, you nod. That last part is prescription-worthy. Before you leave, he gives you a small pouch. "Barley, dust," he says. "Sprinkle it in boiling water, add honey, stir counterclockwise. Only when your dreams feel brittle." You thank him and step back into the daylight, blinking. The smell of spice and yeast clings to you like a memory. And as you walk past market stalls and palm trees, you realize you've seen beer cure fevers, settle stomachs, cleanse corpses, and comfort the grieving. It's medicine, it's myth, it's the gentle hum beneath all Egyptian life, and who knows, maybe tonight, if you wake in the dark, you'll reach for the barley pouch. Just a pinch, just to see if your dreams soften at the edges. You wake the next morning to a familiar sound, bubbling beer and distant goat misbehavior. But today, you're on a mission. A question has been fermenting in your brain, one that until now you've politely avoided asking. How clean is all? This, you've dipped your hands into mash pots. You've watched brewers scoop foam with fingers that also pet goats. You've tasted things you didn't even want to chew. And yet, no one's gotten sick. No plagues, no curses, just happy, slightly wobbly people. You need answers. So you head back to the brewery where a woman greets you with a palm leaf fan and a smirk. "Looking for secrets?" she says. You nod. "Then come see our clean room," she adds, laughing. Spoiler: it's not clean. The brewery hygiene setup is more ritual than regulation. The brewers don't wear gloves. They don't boil their tools. What they do is whisper prayers, light incense, and sprinkle natron salt, the same mineral used to embalm mummies, around the work area. One man smears the lip of each clay jar with a mix of honey and ash, a natural sealant said to keep bugs and evil spirits out. Another woman rubs her tools with fresh papyrus leaves. "Cleans the bad air," she says. You watch as a brewer rinses her hands in a shallow bowl filled with beer foam and lotus water. It's not antiseptic by modern standards, but the barley enzymes do have some mild cleansing properties. And the lotus? Well, it smells better than goat sweat. Modern archaeologists have found residues of lactic acid bacteria in ancient brewing jars, organisms that help outcompete pathogens. In short, the beer cleaned itself. Self-fermenting, self-preserving, self-respecting. Still, nothing could prepare you for the sunscreen you spot a woman dabbing something brownish onto her arms and nose. You recognize the texture immediately. It's the same you once saw near a Nile latrine. "Is that what I think it is?" you ask. She grins. "Crocodile dung." You don't scream, but you make a noise your throat wasn't designed for. "It's dried," she says, "mixed with barley paste, works well, keeps the sun and bad luck off your skin." She points at your nose. "You're burning, by the way." You politely decline the dung treatment. She shrugs. "Your sunburn, your choice." Apparently, croc dung was used not just in sunscreen, but in fertility potions, facial masks, and even as an additive in certain beers during seasonal rituals. No one knows exactly why. Perhaps it symbolized fertility, or maybe it just reminded people to stay humble. You try to imagine FDA approval for any of this, but here, these rituals are science and sanitation rolled into myth and instinct. There's logic in the chaos. The jars are placed only on north-facing shelves to avoid overheating. The barley is stored in elevated bins to deter mice and snakes. Breweries are built beside reed groves, which help filter wind and cool the air. You even learn about the sacred broom, a bundle of dried palm fibers soaked in salt water and herbs. Before brewing, someone sweeps the space with it in figure 8, patterns while chanting a hymn. You ask what happens if they skip it. The brewer gasps, scandalized. The beer goes bitter, or the neighbors get angry, sometimes both. Cleanliness isn't about sterility, it's about balance. Appeasing spirits, respecting grain, honoring the process. You sit under the shade of a sycamore, watching the mash cool in wide, shallow trays. The foam catches the wind, dancing gently. A few bees hover nearby. No one swats them away. "They're Hathor's messengers," someone whispers. If they land in your cup, you're blessed. You remember how, in the modern world, people chase clean eating. Labels, metrics, filters, but here, cleanliness lives in rhythm, in repetition, in remembering to stir clockwise or sing the barley song before dawn, And somehow, against all expectations, it works. People here live long enough to raise children, build pyramids, and argue over the best fish to ferment into sauce. They don't die from a bad brew, not often anyway. Probably. You take a sip of fresh beer, light, cool, strangely floral, and you smile, not because it's perfect, but because it's alive. And being alive is messy, so next time someone tells you ancient people didn't care about hygiene, remind them they used beer foam as hand soap and believed crocodile dung could block the sun, which is either brilliant, terrifying, or both. The scent of fermentation still lingers in the morning air, but something's changed. Fewer jugs line the courtyards, fewer chants echo from the brewery walls. The sacred broom, leaning unused against the doorframe, dusty from neglect. You walk the familiar path toward the central beer house and find its doors half closed, the once constant bubbling now silent. A lone brewer sits on the steps, staring into a clay cup filled not with beer but with wine. She sees your confusion and shrugs, half smiling. At the times, she says, they're changing. This is the beginning of the end, not for Egypt, but for its oldest drink. The golden age of beer, once as foundational as the Nile itself, is gently fizzling out. The reason? Not scandal, not rebellion, not even crocodile dung, just distillation and a growing taste for something else. You follow the shifts like an archaeologist of memory. In the temples, once overflowing with beer offerings, the jars are fewer now. In their place, glass amphorae, sleek and foreign, filled with wines from Crete, Phoenicia, and farther still. Foreign merchants have arrived with ships full of grape liquor, clear, strong, and deceptively sweet. It stings the tongue, burns the chest, and vanishes from the cup faster than anything made from barley ever could. The elites are enamored, the priests are curious. Even the scribes are scribbling notes about liquid light and spirit fire. Beer, with all its humble froth and floating bread chunks, starts to look old-fashioned. You speak to an aging brewer who once supplied the whole quarter. She nods slowly, brushing ash from her apron. The young ones want wine now. They think beer is for peasants. Her voice isn't angry, just tired. She tells you that many of the old recipes are being lost, not because people forgot, but because they stopped caring. No one wants to grind by hand. No one wants to chant before stirring. And why ferment in the sun when you can pour from a bottle sealed in cedar and stamped with a foreign king's crest? You step inside the brewery. It smells like memory. The clay vats are dry. The baskets hang limp from their pegs. One pot still holds a crusted ring of dried mash, like the ghost of a beer that never got poured. Even the tax office has changed. The scribes' scrolls now list wine imports alongside grain counts. The beer tax has diminished, replaced with silver coinage and vineyard duties. You overhear one collector mutter, harder to skim wine, comes in sealed jugs, no foam to measure. Scholars now puzzle over this transition. Was it economic, cultural, religious? Some argue that as Egypt opened to foreign influence, especially under Greek and Roman rule, beer was pushed aside, its reputation downgraded. Others blame it on practicality. Wine travels better, ages better, looks better in art. But here, on the ground, in this dusty, sacred, half-forgotten brewery, you know the truth is simpler. People changed, tastes changed, and rituals no matter. How ancient are only as strong as the hands that remember them. Still not all is lost. You find a small gathering by the riverbank. An older woman, one of the wheat beer priestesses, has gathered a few girls around a clay pot. They chant, stir, laugh. It's not a festival, not a ceremony, just brewing, the old way. She sees you watching, offers a small wooden cup. It tastes familiar, like barley and dates and stories that refuse to be erased. And suddenly, you understand. Beer isn't gone. It's just sleeping, waiting, biding time in memory, in legend, in blood. You raise your cup to the fading sun, the dusty brewery, and the last bubbles of a golden age, and you drink, not to forget, but to remember. The wind off the Nile feels different tonight, gentler, cooler, as if even the air knows the story is almost over. You walk once more to the riverbank where it all began, the same soft silt underfoot, the same reeds whispering secrets to each other. The sun is long gone now, and the moon paints the water with slow, shimmering strokes. Someone has lit a small fire near the shoreline. Around it sit just a handful of people, old brewers, temple assistants, a curious child or two, and you. A single pot rests in the center of the circle, steaming faintly, filled with a modest batch of beer, not for ceremony, not for tax, not even for trade, just to share. You're handed a cup, worn smooth by 1,000 sips, and as you bring it to your lips, you inhale something rich, malty, almost earthy. Not fizzy this time, not bitter, just calm. As if the barley itself remembers it's the last batch of the season. You sip slowly, warm, nutty, comforting, like being wrapped in a blanket woven from stories, mistakes, and stubborn memory. The others sip in silence, not because there's nothing to say, but because there's nothing left that needs explaining. Everyone here knows. They've lived the brewing songs, felt the splash of the mash on their arms, measured their lives not in days but in batches, thick or thin, sweet or spoiled. You look up at the stars, they look down, unchanged, the same stars that watched over. The first jar of beer left out to ferment by accident, or divine design, thousands of years ago. There's a soft hum now. Someone is singing a lullaby in an ancient tongue. The kind of song you'd sing to a child. Or to the end of an era, one. Woman leans toward you and whispers, "Do you know why we always brew near water?" You shake your head. She smiles, eyes bright in the firelight. Because beer remembers the river, and the river never forgets us. You finish your cup. Not in a rush, you don't need another. That was enough. Because this isn't about thirst, it's about presence. You lie back on the sand, the cup still warm in your hands. The fire crackles, the wind shifts. Somewhere nearby a frog croaks, and the pot bubbles gently, as if it too is falling asleep. You close your eyes, not to leave the story, but to let it settle inside you. The smell of toasted grain, the rhythm of the chant, the quiet gratitude of those who brewed for gods and for each other. No monuments, no fanfare, just a last sip. Shared in silence, and in that stillness you finally understand. The beer was never just a drink, it was a memory. And tonight it became yours. Now sleep, friend, let the barley bubbles carry you. Let the Nile murmur you into dreams. Let the gods smile gently as you drift away. End of script, sweet dreams.